What is the most disgusting thing you've put in your mouth ever, purposely or not? Not the most disgusting, but a funny story. Walking around a small town, a man with a silver platter stood in front of his store. It was next door to a coffee shop. I was a little drunk and not paying ATN. He offered the plate and said sample. I grabbed the brown square and bit off a small chunk of it, thinking it was chocolate or something. The man was giving out small samples of their soap. Munched for a few seconds while he looked on in horror. I genuinely didn't understand how chocolate could taste so bad. He finally found his voice and yelled, soap. Soap samples is so weird to me. Unwrapped and all. Are you supposed to lather up right then and there? Weird as hell shower. Now, back when I was a kid, was on a long car trip during a night, was really thirsty and saw a bottle in the car. Without even looking much at it, I drank some, thinking it was water. Nope, windshield washing fluid. LL, I expected piss, but this was better expected vodka. I accidentally drank vodka when I was 5 and I think I had a meltdown. Cockroach. I drank out of the tap in my bathroom, and when I turned the tap on, a cockroach shot out of the faucet into my mouth. I would die right then and there. I once left the top of my steel water bottle off overnight and a cockroach got in and drowned. My water tasted really gross, so I peeked in and saw the cocky. I gagged. When I was a kid, I was lying down sleeping when I felt something right by my face. I was still half asleep, so I grabbed it and was trying to figure out what it was. I was twiddling it in my fingers, then put it down and licked my fingers, cause maybe it was food. It tasted so sour and bitter like poison. I was like WTF and turned on the lights, and it was a water bug that I broke in half with my fingers, lol. Ate 2 days old microwave spaghetti from the fridge in the dark, cause I wanted to be quiet in the house. After a first big bite, it turns out spaghetti was way older than 2 days, and there was already a whole new fungus species in it, very soft. Cannot describe the taste, but it stayed with me for 1 week. You are actually lucky to be alive with all your limbs. There is a particular strain of bacteria that inhabits left out old pasta and rice that can kill you. If it doesn't kill you, it can destroy tissue in your arms and legs to the extent requiring amputation. Was walking through my kitchen in the middle of the night. My sister's bedroom was close by, so I kept all the lights off as to not wake her. My perfect mental image told me that there was a bottle of mango juice on the counter. With one motion, I scooped it up, spun the cap off with my thumb, and took a swig. Except there was no cap, and the mango juice tasted really bad. I realized something was wiggling all around my hand and slammed the light switch. Ants. Ants all over the bottle, all over the rim. I ran over to the sink and spat out about 40 ants. Cat urine. My previous cat had jumped onto me when I was laying on the couch trying to fall asleep. I must have had my mouth open for a second, and in that time, he sprayed me, and it just happened to land in my mouth. Certainly didn't expect it to happen. My answer was my cat sneezing in my mouth when I yawned, but you win. Yuck. The last swig of beer that everyone had been putting their siggy butts in. My brother New ID picked up the wrong beer and said nothing. This is the one I was gonna say, except I'm such a dumbass. I thought it only tasted like ash because a smoker had taken a swig, so I went back for a second one before realizing I ended up throwing up LMFAO. Just thinking about the fact I'd swallowed a bit had me dry heaving randomly for like 2 days. Rat water. Worked a long day in the sun and drank all of my water. Filled up my bottle when I stopped to drop a coworker off at his house. Drank 500 milliliters of my 1.5 liter and knew something wasn't right. 2 weeks later, my coworker tells us that he found a dead rat in his well. He thought his water tasted weird 2 weeks before I was there and checked his well, but there was one place he couldn't see behind. Checked a month later and found the decomposing rat. Also, our dog was sprayed by a skunk and shook the foam out of her mouth and straight into mine as I was bathing her. My mouth was foaming and tasted of skunk for hours. TLDR survived the plague and got skunked. Jesus Christ, I was not prepared for either one of these. I once went to do an outdoor activity and brought a can of Red Bull. I drank most of it, went onto the playing field for a few hours, and when I came back, I was so thirsty I figured I'd try to get the last few drops out of that can. A few wasps had beaten me to it though. Not necessarily disgusting, but I cannot recommend it. When I was a kid, I was very allergic to bees. Similar thing happened to me. I was at the beach, drank half my Sunkist, went off for a while, and came back later to take a swig of my drink. I felt something lumpy in my mouth, so instinctively spat everything out onto the grass, and there was a bee, still alive, soaked in Sunkist, still with its stinger attached. My mom saw the whole thing and freaked. I was shocked. My dog loved to chew on those dried pig ears. One time she didn't want one that had been laying on the balcony over the night, so I pretended to chew on it just to be silly and see if she got interested. Removed it from my mouth and noticed it was full of what looked like tiny tiny orangish ants. Let's just say I spent a long time washing my mouth. I've also eaten the outer layers of onions I find on my kitchen floor thinking it was a bit of cheese, but that just me being an overgrown baby exploring everything with my mouth. I don't think floor cheese is a much better look than floor onion skin, mate. I think this is definitely up there, and I don't remember if it was worse than piss or not. Seagull shit. I moved to a new city, and I was lucky enough to get shit on by 3 seagulls over the course of 2 weeks. Welcome. Part of one of the bombings was from 12 o'clock, and part of that went into my mouth. It hit my lip and dripped down and in. It was raining a little bit, and I believe I had mistaken some perspiration for shit, so I kind of just slurped it up and licked my lips before the gagging started. It was awful. I wish I could unread that. If you hate seagulls with the wrath of a million suns, I totally understand. While changing the bag in the kitchen trash bin, the bin lifted from the floor momentarily and then slammed back to the ground, catapulting an ancient crusty chunk of indistinguishable crud from the bottom of the bin in a perfect arc, directly into the back of my mouth and down my throat. I still gag thinking about it. The way you described that was perfect. I'm going to preface this with, I did not mean to put it in my mouth. When I was a kid, I had one of those baby dolls that you could feed food to and it would make dirty diapers. It came with this powder you mixed with water to make baby food. I decided to play with it after not playing with it for a while, and the baby food wouldn't slide down. It just kept getting stuck in the mouth. I concluded that there must be something stuck in the throat tube thing, so I sucked as hard as I could on the mouth of the doll, and a chunk of something shot up into my mouth. It was a slimy, moldy piece of broccoli that my little sister had shoved in there, some 30 plus years later, and I can still remember the vomit-inducing taste of that absolute abomination. I was pissed and dropped a piece of kebab meat on the kitchen floor. I picked it up and put it in my mouth, only to find it wasn't a piece of meat, but a slug. Reading this made my body spasm in disgust and nearly chucked my phone across the room. Have you ever seen the story of the lad who was paralyzed after eating a slug as a dare when pissed? Google it if not. It's fucking horrifying. Hakarl. It's an Icelandic delicacy of shark that's been buried in the ground for 3 months, then dug up again to eat. Sharks have cartilage rather than bone. Cartilage gives off ammonia as it decomposes, so eating hakarl is what I imagine a toilet cube would taste like. However, if you're 14 and pig-headed stupid and want to impress your friends on a school trip, you will. Came here to say this. I had some on a pub crawl in Reykjavik. They gave us a cube of shark and then a shot of Brennivin to wash it down with. Problem is, I also hate all aniseed flavored things, so having some rank shark and washing it down with an aniseedy shot made me nearly vomit. Instantly sat with a churning stomach trying desperately to wash away the taste with beer. Ancient caked dishwasher soap deposit. I was 10. I was hungry. Mom had cleaned the scum out of the washing machine and left it on the side on a paper plate and gone to answer the door. It looked and smelled like funky blue Roquefort cheese, which I loved. I ate some thinking it was the real deal. It's on a plate. It must be food. It tasted a bit funny, but the penny dropped only when my mom returned from the door and I was curled up in the kitchen corner blowing huge soap bubbles and moaning about how the cheese wasn't right. Sea cucumber and jellyfish. Both in China, both just awful. The texture, appearance, especially sea cucumber. It looks alien. Also, both had almost zero taste. If you have to jazz something up with so much sauce and flavoring in this day and age, perhaps we don't really need to be killing them to eat. I liken the jellyfish to eating an empty, soggy Mr. Freeze wrapper. I was trying to be polite, but nope, not for me. Stink bug was at a picnic and it apparently crawled inside my sandwich. It sprayed or whatever when I bit down, so I didn't actually eat it. It was hard trying to hold myself together and not freak out my then toddler. When my brother was a little kid, he accidentally ate one. Our mother gave him every candy she could, but the smell didn't go away. My grandmother has a habit of placing her chewed gum on her plate to save it for later. Now, I don't even know how it happened, but clearly she put what she didn't finish on her plate back into the container and forgot the gum. I think it was like a vodka chicken penne, which I was overjoyed to find in the fridge. Took me a solid 30 seconds of chewing to figure out why that piece of chicken was off and dully mint flavored. She also pulls the tough bits of steak out of her mouth after chewing the life out of them. Made that mistake once or twice too. Now I just avoid her leftovers or give each bite a very thorough inspection. It's a close tie between a fish oil capsule, that burst in my mouth while I was searching for another tablet I dropped. I don't know why I didn't just gulp that one down and then resume the search instead of leaving it warming up in my mouth. And unclean, deep-fried pig intestines. I went through a phase as a kid where I loved offal, and no one else in my family was willing to risk the deep-fried offal served from this place. But I wanted it, so I made them order it. And then it was a matter of pride. God, it stank. I couldn't eat offal for at least the next 5 years. I ate ham that was very much expired, but my wife cooked with so many spices, I thought it was a new flavor. I ate the entire plate in a minute and thought it was odd, but wasn't sure. She took one bite and was like, WTF. I smelled the bag, which contained the rest of the ham, and it was putrid. Immediately started vomiting. 10/10 expired meat gross. PSA for eating slow too.